Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to, depending on however you decide to look at your clock or wherever you may live, an early morning or middle of the night bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this early morning or middle of the night bonus upload, shall we? All right, today's first encounter. I'm not a super big believer in the paranormal or supernatural, but I've always been open to the idea of such, given some type of evidence. And this experience is 100% true and may be a little long, so I apologize. Anyway, about 3 nights ago, I saw something that I still can't fully understand or explain. First, a little background. I live in mid-Michigan in a small residential suburban town surrounded by cornfields. Y'all know the type. However, I do live in a more populated area, as my parents' house, where I currently reside, is located within walking distance from our downtown. Our street is by no means desolate, dark, or isolated, and most of the houses are fairly close to one another. A pretty urban setting, given the town itself. Okay, back to the other night. It was about 2:30 in the morning, and since it's pretty normal for me to be up late, my dog and I have developed what I call our little routine. He comes to my door and lets out this huff to inform me that he is there. Then we go downstairs and I let him outside through the front door to use the bathroom. After doing his business, he comes in and we share a midnight snack of ham straight from the fridge. Now, keep in mind, my dog is extremely well trained and pretty old. He doesn't need a leash or a fence to keep him in from running away. He always comes right back after he's done. He'll even wait at the door if I'm not there. So on this particular night, I open the door for him, and I'm just about to turn and walk away so I can prepare our midnight snack when I notice he's still standing on the porch staring across the street. This isn't completely out of the norm for him, but this was lasting a bit longer than usual. When he finally jumps off the porch, I follow his line of sight where he has been staring, and I see what looks like a large dog, or maybe even a wolf, slinking across my neighbor's yard on the other side of the street. For the first few seconds, I'm trying to figure out what this thing is, because it looks like it could be a dog, but something isn't right. It's too long, and the way it's moving is not normal. And even though it's only 50 feet away, it looked as though it was blurry. I can't think of any other way to describe it. None of it made sense. At this point, I go into panic mode because so far this creature hasn't seemed to notice me or my dog. But if it does, my dog does not stand a chance. Like I said, he's old, and he's also a Pomeranian. Whatever this thing was would easily destroy him with no doubt. I decide to slowly open the outer glass door, hoping to create just enough noise to alert my dog that it's time to come in. But not enough for whatever that thing is to hear. Luckily, my dog notices right away and starts running back toward me. But at that same time, this dog creature starts turning toward me slowly. It almost felt fake how unnaturally it moved, like animatronics or something. I'm not even sure of what I was looking at, but I have this indescribable feeling that I am not supposed to be seeing this. So, as this thing is turning to look at me, my dog is coming through the door simultaneously, and for about a second I take my eyes off the creature thing, looking down at my dog as he walks through the door. When I look back up, this thing has moved 30 feet to the left into my neighbor's driveway rather than their yard and is standing on its hind legs and is now 7 to 8 feet tall, staring right at me. Now I start freaking out. How did it move so quickly? And how didn't it make a single sound? And why is it so tall? Literally, I only looked away for a second. I look away again to lock the door and gather myself, only to look up again and see absolutely nothing. It was gone. The whole ordeal lasted maybe 20 to 30 seconds. Shaking, I gave my dog his ham and mine. I ran downstairs to my brother's room in the basement to tell him what happened. Being the normal 19-year-old playing video games, his response was, "Wow, WTF, that's super weird." But honestly, I just needed to tell someone to confirm what happened, actually, if it really did happen, and I wouldn't wake up the next day and convince myself that it was a dream. Over the last few days, I've told everyone who would listen about what I saw, including my mom and dad. Those who are closer to me seemed to be a bit unnerved because, like I mentioned earlier, I usually don't believe in this type of stuff. They could tell I was shaken by whatever it was that I'd seen that night. Tonight, after some random Googling as a result of my restless mind, I came across what appears to be an exact description of what I saw. A creature called the Dogman, which eventually led me to believe that is what I've seen. I have never heard of anything like this before, but now I am fully convinced that I saw one in my front yard with my own eyes. Thank you. Tonight's second encounter. So this is a secondhand account coming from a close friend who has given me no reason to doubt them. February 27th, 2023, my friend was driving home from work, passing down my country road sometime between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m., less than a mile from my house, at the end of my township, within 1,000 feet from the closest house. He saw this unknown creature. It was at the edge of the road, as if it was about to cross. It was pitch black, very furry, had a bobbed tail and the face of a pit bull. He could see its jowls. It had dog-like ears, slender but muscular, and was standing on all fours. When it saw my friend, it paid no attention to him, but slowly turned around and leapt back into the woods. When it leapt, it jumped like a frog. Its legs were turned out, just like a frog's would be. It was appropriately the size of a Great Dane on all fours. My friend was uncertain if it had humanoid feet, and could not identify much else. Where he reported to have seen this is a wooded area right beside a small bayou, and there is a notable nook that leads off into the woods right there where he'd seen it. The very same night after he saw it, he started hearing strange noises, akin to something climbing a wooden structure, thuds and sounds of wood bowing. Some events, possibly unrelated. 6 or 7 years ago, I saw something strange leap between one section of the woods to another, across the highway about a half a mile from my house. It was black, hairy, and ape-like at the first glimpse. Maybe 3 years ago, my wife and I heard tapping on our window behind us at around midnight. We laughed about it at first, but my cousin from across the street called me moments after and said, "Hey, there's something big in your yard." I could hear it running through your yard. It's in the woods now. We investigated and heard it rustling through the trees, but I never saw it. The next morning, outside the window that was tapped on was a large humanoid footprint, barefoot, and to tap on the glass would require something to stand upright and be at least 5 foot minimum, given the lifted foundation. About 3 years ago, me and a buddy were hanging out and we saw something strange walk into my cousin's yard across the street. It was large, black, and furry, walking on all fours, and appeared to be a pig at first glance. We scoped in on it and could not determine what it was. It had a dog-like snout, but the stature and build of a hog. It was about the size of a large hog, or perhaps a large bear. I don't remember it having a tail. It sniffed around the house, circled it, and then went back into the woods. A year ago, I was driving at night from the far end of my road. There's a curve approximately a half a mile from where my friend reported seeing his creature. On that curve, as I banked it a bit, my headlight shined into the woods and revealed eye shine about 6 to 7 feet off the ground. I stopped the car next to where I'd seen the eye shine to examine. I didn't see anything else, but the smell of rotten meat flooded my car, and I promptly left. Still about a year ago, I was outside at around midnight. I heard strange noises in my cousin's yard. I shined the flashlight over and caught some eye shine at the average height from the ground. It looked at me and kept walking into the woodline. In my experience, if you spotlight something and can see its eyes shine, they stop and stare at you. This thing kept going, but watched me the whole time. I continued to shine into the woodline for a bit longer, and it returned about 15 feet down the woodline. It stared at me from within the woods and turned around. I continued to shine the light and caught it one more time in the same place as the second encounter. It looked at me for a moment, turned away. I didn't see the eye shine again. At that time, I had an eerie feeling that it seemed too sentient to be a dog, or to be a deer or a hog, Maybe a large cat, but no normal woodland critters from around here. Now, this may be unrelated, but I felt like I would share. For the past few weeks, my entire property has reeked of skunk. Our house gets sprayed from time to time by local skunks, but the smell usually dissipates after 2 days. This time it's been almost 2 weeks and the smell is pungent. Even out on the road by my house, my home seems to be the epicenter, but the smell extends around 100 yards around my house in all directions. All of these instances were just strange coincidence, I don't know, until my friend saw this creature. Now, I'm not ruling them out as possible encounters with this creature. Any and all guesses as to the nature of this creature would be appreciated. Thank you. Tonight's third encounter. We lived in the Kamichi Mountains, with about an acre of land at the base of the mountain. It was late at night and something was printed in the corner of my eye. My boyfriend quickly ran to the edge of the porch as my dog chased after it. Once I realized that what I was seeing, I was begging for my dog to come back. It was about 5 foot tall, hunched over, with white and black fur. The color of this thing was almost glitchy. It had ears on the top of its head and a short snout. We didn't see any arms at all while it was running, and also a tail which was fuzzy. It was bipedal and running so fast, but its head was not bobbling at all. As my dog ran toward it, she was physically confused and stopped and shook her head as she was running the wrong direction. She's not a dumb dog, she's a cattle dog. And she's never deliberately ran the wrong direction at something she's pursuing. In my shock, all I could mutter was, "Oh my God, is that a human?" As it was the only thing I could think of seeing, this dog person run across my yard. The next thing I knew, my boyfriend was walking in the yard to get a better view of this thing while I was trying not to pee my pants. This dog creature scaled the cow fence, about 5 foot tall, behind our RV within absolute seconds. I was halfway inside the house, scared to even be outside, while screaming for my dog to return as she regained her brains and was chasing the thing. My boyfriend said it stood up in the cow field, right under the only single light post in the field, with its back to him, and its shoulders were broad, its height easily another 3 feet from when we saw it standing 5 feet hunched over. Now this all took place within seconds, but it was all so clear in slow motion. We did investigate the fence the next morning and did find some white coarse fur on the top of the fence. We ended up losing it shortly after with no evidence of this at all. We have both our stories, which line up completely. Living there, I have seen the beast once more on my own, which scared me completely. I suspected pterodactyl ghosts, hundreds of UFOs, weird lights in our windows, possibly Bigfoot, and a strange woman's voice on the opposite side of the hunting dog's pen, asking a question in an unknown language with no dogs to bark at her, which was super strange. So, really quick, I don't know why she put suspected, but I think what she meant was they had seen something like a thunderbird, obviously, ghost, UFOs, weird lights, possibly a Bigfoot, the strange woman thing, and now the Dogman. I did a little looking into that mountain range, and it does have a lot of native lore or history in that location, which is pretty creepy, you know. Like Skinwalker Ranch, you know, if you think about Skinwalker Ranch, you have this one place that has numerous encounters ranging from ghost to cryptids, UFO. So something like this is not that far out of the norm in this kind of field that we all love and research. Definitely creepy encounter though. I got another encounter, but I kind of want to touch basis on something really quick. And I think a lot of you will likely agree with this. All right, so I got into a discussion with a buddy of mine, and we were talking about the paranormal. He believes in the paranormal. He believes in spirits, entities, demons, God. Not saying God is paranormal, but if there is a God, which we all know there is a devil. And for some reason, demons are classified as paranormal. Would that classify angels as paranormal? I don't know, but that's not the topic that we're talking about. He didn't believe in cryptids. He didn't believe at all in cryptids. And I was just like, well, you know, why? Why don't you believe in cryptids? And he's like, well, first of all, nobody has ever found one dead in the woods. I'm like, how do you know? How do you know? Because I've heard numerous encounters from law enforcement to military to just the average Joe talking about dead Bigfoot, dead Dogmen. And he's just, you know, he just kept kind of trying to tear away at the existence of these creatures. And I said, well, hold up. Here's two things I want you to think about. I said, one, and I pulled how many times do we go hiking? And how many times do we see a bear? How many times do we see a wolf, a fox, a this, a that? Very seldom when we're out there. I've actually had that conversation with somebody and they're like, I see deer all the time. Okay, well, how often do you see a bear every time you go hiking? Unless you're in a centrally located area where there are bear or deer. And it just so happened this one person happened to live in a place where there is just a multitude of deer. And he kind of sat there for a second. He's like, yeah, that's true. And then I'm like, but here's the final thing I want you to think about. I said, not even for 10, 15 years, but for thousands of years, these creatures have been spoken about. And not just in America, from all four corners of the earth. Russia, China, America, all the way down to the bottom of South America, Canada. All throughout this world, these creatures have been spoken about. And for thousands of years. And if you really think about things, the Dogman has been spoken about for thousands of years as well. Bigfoot, giants. I said, you can't tell me that a guy in China has an encounter, I had an encounter shared with me from a subscriber in Israel that had a Dogman encounter. Thousands of miles away from the States. How do you explain that? Well, the government would tell us. They'd say something, there'd be a disclosure. I said, well, they got their hands full with the UFO UAP, but I said, did you ever think about the TV shows that we watch? Did you ever think about the movies that come out? The original series V, back in the 80s, I believe was a soft disclosure. And then they re-aired it and redid it. Things like this, if they were fake, if these things did not exist, people in different countries for thousands of years wouldn't talk about the same thing. There are cave paintings in the United States that match up to strange paintings in Europe, roughly the same age. Can't explain that. And right there, to me, points to the existence of these creatures. On top of what I saw, that strange creature that did not look worldly. Didn't look like it belonged on this earth. But people have had encounters with something like that before. It almost resembled Anubis. And I never really thought about how it looked until about a year and a half ago, when I was describing it and someone said that sounds like Anubis, and I was like, yeah, it does. That's strange. So to me, that right there is solid evidence of the existence of these creatures. Like I said, I want to know what you guys think. To me, it makes sense. Maybe I'm so far down a rabbit hole that everything makes sense now. but to me that makes a lot of sense. Let's jump into another encounter. Tonight's fourth encounter is dedicated to you, pups. I appreciate all of your birthday gifts and your kindness. The reason why this is dedicated to you is because it's from your home state, Utah. I had a couple of experiences in the 70s. I was newly moved to what was then a fairly wooded area of Provo, Utah on the northwestern side. My mom and I lived on a main artery of town with woods going down to the Provo River. A couple of my girlfriends from high school had spent a Saturday night at my house. That Sunday morning we walked down to the fields and apple orchards in the back of the house, which went back several acres. We had just gone between two old outbuildings and were about to open the gate to go to the orchard over the irrigation creek, when all three of us heard an extremely loud growl and howl coming from the building to our right. It didn't sound like a dog or have a wild, crazy cry like a coyote. It sounded to all three of us exactly like a howling of a wolf. We looked at each other and ran for the house. We were the only ones home. We locked the doors, pulled down the shades, and huddled in the living room trying to figure out what we heard. All three of us were experienced campers, and we had heard all sorts of animals on these trips, and many of the camping trips had been us three together. This sounded weird, sort of extremely loud, but yet muffled, like listening to a kid talking into an old string and can phone. Tape recorders were cassettes or reel-to-reel at the time. There was no way someone was hiding in that building playing a recording. There was no electricity in those buildings. They were boarded up and padlocked. There were no loose boards or holes. Something like a big dog or even a cat could get in. You'd need to have an amplifier or speaker cranked up to get that sort of volume. My mom found us sitting in the front room in the dark. We were all real hesitant to tell her what had happened. She sort of blew it off. We never did find out anything about it. The adults that we asked about it said it was our imagination. To this day, the three of us still talk about it. The second encounter happened in 1977. I was in college then and now living in a massive apartment complex in southwest part of Provo. My mom and I had gone to bed at around 9. We were both awakened at 1 a.m. to growling, whining, and that same loud freaking howling right outside the sliding glass door outside of my bedroom. We could hear something large out there. It let out this blood-curdling howl almost exactly like the one my friends and I heard a few years earlier. My mom wanted to look out the window. I had 2 small adult dogs at the time, and they had dove under the bed silently and wouldn't come out for hours. I told her not to look out the window. I didn't even want to see this thing. But, more to the point, I didn't want it to see us. We could hear it whining and growling and running off through the parking lot, eventually fading away. We didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I knocked on our neighbor's door and asked if they had heard a dog howling in our adjoining backyard, and he said no. He had slept peacefully. It was hard for me to believe he hadn't heard it because it was so loud. I told my mom what he had told me, and she couldn't believe anyone would have slept through that. We stayed up the next night and waited. We couldn't sleep. I had since tacked down my drapes, so whatever this was wouldn't be able to peek in. So we drank coffee in the front room in dark and watched the clock. At around 1 a.m, it started again. Again, the dogs froze and silently and suddenly darted, noiseless, under the table and shook. This time the whining, or whatever it was, almost sounded like a baby crying. There was growling, and then it began to howl. Midway through the howl, it suddenly stopped, like something had startled it. We heard a rustle and a loud thumping running. Again, we heard that weird baby cry and fade off through the grass going west. We never heard it again. Sounds like I don't know. It definitely sounds like a Dogman, but I wonder if that howling brought in a Bigfoot. That baby cry. People hear that baby cry when they see a Bigfoot. So I'm wondering if that Dogman, that howling, all the noise and the racket brought in a Bigfoot, and the Bigfoot was checking out what was going on. Maybe. Who knows? Or maybe Dogmen do cry like babies, but that's a lot of different sounds coming from one animal or one creature. Pretty strange. And tonight's final encounter. This is an experience I heard years ago from a flatmate of mine. I won't be able to elaborate on the details, but I will try to recall from my memory the best I can. It happened in Hungary. P.S. English is not my first language, so sorry if there are discrepancies in government institutions or anything like that. His dad was a hunter, so took him hunting quite a lot, and if memory serves me right, Dad was employed by something like the National Guard, so not someone who's easily scared. Anyway, this one night they were out, flatmate, around 10 at night, and camped in a meadow near the forest. In early autumn, so it wasn't too cold. At some point, while having dinner, they heard rustling in the nearby woods. Not surprising, a lot of wildlife around. Can't recall the in-between, but eventually they went to investigate. They spotted a wild boar, and Dad was about to take a shot when something large rose out of the night. It was dark, so they couldn't see much, but they were also too close to the thing. Grass was not too tall, so it appeared that it was either crouching without moving or lying, but once it stood, it was clearly walking on its two legs and was not a human. Dark fur, clearly canine features, and glowing red eyes. It looked them over and just walked away. They were frozen in place, and my flatmate said that he had never been so scared in his life. They took off running, jumped into the car, and drove away. His dad had another sighting of something similar while on patrol, but I don't remember that experience well, and unfortunately haven't bumped into this guy in a long time. This experience has always fascinated me. And that wraps up tonight's or early morning's bonus upload. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that keeps this channel growing and going, and what gives folks like us a place and a chance to share our experiences, judgment-free, just simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.